Welcome, welcome, welcome to another Wise Women Roundtable. And wow, do we have a lot to share with you because we are in, we're always in unprecedented times, but it's like off the charts and crazy, insane time that we've been in and that we're going to continue to be in, that it is happening for us to get us to where we are truly meant to be. And it can feel a little challenging. It can feel disruptive. It can feel like what the heck is going on, or what the hell is going on right now. But we are we're recording this as we're approaching the March equinox, and this March equinox is amazing. And so the energies that are happening as we approach the March equinox are amazing. So the first thing I wanted to share is that we've got Chiron as a major feature, and Jupiter and Chiron together. In fact, they are within less than a degree right now as we're doing the recording. They're going to stay within 5 degrees until Beltane. They will be exact on March 12th. So this will be released probably before the you'll get to hear that. But even if you don't hear this before March 12th, the energy will be very present. So Chiron and Jupiter in Aries, what in the world does that mean? And of course, the March equinox is when the sun reaches 0 Aries. So the whole Aries energy is so present for us right now. Chiron is all about shamanic healing. And it's basically turning the wounds into our medicine. So whatever wounds we may have had, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, any kind of wounding that we may have, the opportunity is to turn it into our medicine so that we're not at the effect of the wound, but the wound becomes a strength, it becomes a gift, it becomes something that supports us in being who we really are, rather than from that wounded place. But that does take some commitment to be willing to engage that process of healing those wounds, doing the deeper dive into whatever that might be, releasing whatever we need to release, transforming whatever we need to transform. And when Chiron went into Aries in 2018, I put together this thought of how Chiron in Aries is about restoring cosmic justice. So how are we helping to do that, or how is that happening within ourselves? Because we live in a fairly unjust world. If you look at things on the surface, it looks very unjust in many ways. And what does it take to establish justice? And Aries is here. It's like the committed, I am here to stand for justice and stand for what is right and true and good and the common good, and not just what's good for an elite few or for whatever that's about. So I felt into that, and what I saw was that there are 3 powers that Chiron and Aries is bringing forth for us to tune into to assist with this process: the power of love, the power of kindness, and the power of forgiving the unforgivable. And first, of course, we need to start with forgiving ourselves. And forgiveness, it's not something that you do. It's like we can say, oh yeah, I forgive you, whatever, but it's like, but for it to be genuine and true, we need to be in the frequency of forgiveness and forgiving first ourselves, because anything that we may feel has been unjustly done towards us, or that we maybe have not acted in the best integrity in a moment for whatever reason. Sometimes it was a response or a reaction or whatever that was. And getting to that place where we can be really forgiving who we are and what we have done, any mistakes we have made, any places where we feel that there may be some guilt or shame or fear or blame or judgment or anger or resentment or whatever it might be. That's our opportunity with Chiron and Jupiter. So this is what Chiron's all about, and Jupiter is expanding Chiron at this time. As we are doing this recording, it's massively expansive energy coming in to help support this intention. So if we can align ourselves with that and look at how we can work with this coming into the frequency of forgiveness. And to me, that's also similar to the frequency of pure love. When we're in a place of pure love, we're not holding grudges, we're not angry, we're not resentful, we're not seeking revenge or punishing ourselves or trying to punish somebody else or whatever it might be that we tend to do. So that frequency, tuning into that frequency, what does it take to let go, and maybe going out and offering to the earth all our hurt and pain and guilt and shame and fear and blame, all the ways that we have defended ourselves, try to explain things away, just letting all that go as much as we possibly can, so that we can come into this place as we approach the equinox. And this equinox is featuring a new moon. And that doesn't happen all that often. It did happen about 19 years ago. We had a new moon very close to the equinox. And so the seed point, if we look at the new moon as a seed point, we're seeding these intentions. So any work we can do now as we're approaching that equinox and beyond, because again, Jupiter and Chiron are going to be close together until Beltane, close enough that that energy is with us all this time. A couple of other quick things is that Neptune is with the sun and with Mercury, and on March 15th and 16th, and squaring Mars on the 14th. So Neptune's bringing in this big energy as well. And that is the, to me, I feel like it's the dreaming energy. How do we dream in this new reality that we're going to seed at the equinox? And let go and grieve everything that's in the way of us being able to do that. So that process of grieving, deeply grieving what we need to grieve, and just give ourselves permission to be there. And there are cultures that have grieving ceremonies that they do regularly, as like tribal cultures in Africa, they do that. And I got to be a part of one here in Tucson, Arizona, back in 2010, that absolutely changed my life. And so that's when I really got the importance of grieving. So these are the things that we can do to help support this new energy that's ready to come in, and so that we can be in that clean and clear space to allow that to come through us. So we want to practice being in the frequency of love and forgiving ourselves, forgiving the unforgivable within ourselves and others, and also practicing kindness, especially to ourselves at this time, so that we can approach this new energy. Oh, and just one more thing, Pluto, of course, is going into Aquarius, and that's going to create a big shift, something we'll talk about a little bit more, because it'll be there for 20 years. In Aquarius, it's going to go back into a Capricorn. It's only going to be in Aquarius for a few weeks and then go back in. So we'll have time to talk about that more, but it is going to help remove every obstacle in the way of our expanded vision of what's possible. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Elizabeth, who's going to help expand our vision of what's possible.
No, thank you. I'm going to write on two pieces. What are the new energies that are showing up, and of course a couple of tools, some more tools to help us with the wounding that's healing. And the wounding that's healing is also related to the shattering of illusion. And in the past year, we had a lot of energy coming through that was really dense, and it was kicking everything up for us to examine. And so we had this opportunity for us to go really deep into the examination of those woundings and the cultural and spiritual conditionings we've had, even past life pieces that needed to come out onto the table. So it was sort of like a big puzzle that got spilled out onto the table. And now the puzzle pieces are getting put together. And, you know, you don't end up doing a puzzle necessarily from one corner to another perfectly. You get little chunks of your puzzle done, and you start to see, oh, I see what this part of this picture is here that wasn't so clear before. And so you get little pieces that come along until the bigger picture is very, very clear. And that bigger picture is not fully clear yet. I think it'll probably take the rest of the year for the puzzle to be done, because it's a big puzzle. So some of the pieces that are showing up right now are to allow this very clear light to come in and shatter any illusions. It comes down like a hammer. It's the energetics of Kali, which is time. And this shatters any sort of illusion in your way from that keeps you from or distorts the energy that's available. So some of the shattering that's happening has to do with the wounding, but when you drop past any sort of wounding, you're going to find a fear-desire dynamic. And that fear-desire dynamic, I believe, is really important as a guidance tool to keep making sure that you're aware of how you fear and desire whatever's happening in your life. The desire for initiations or different events can be very elusive because we don't often think that we are desiring troublesome or initiation level events. But the truth is that we do. We want this in consciousness, and as a navigator of consciousness, you're always going to come up against the thing, the next big fear that you have to shatter. And there's been an interesting tool that has come up in my own initiations over the past 2 months, my initiation into fearlessness. And this fearlessness is so precious as a gift. It's part of the energies available on the other side of all of this effort. But the way that it showed up for me, and I think it would be useful to others, is that I understand what my personal energetic, my soul's frequency or essence is. I'm aware of what that is. It's becoming much easier to assess and attain that truth at this point in time. But I don't think that's an accident. I think that it's related to then this very interesting part in consciousness where you actually seek out your opposite. And if I intended for this year to start out with, I need to get down to the bottom of the last vestiges of the most awful fear I can get to. And I excitedly offered that as my intent for this year, and probably would not have done that if I knew what was going to happen, but that's exactly why we don't know what's going to happen. So finding this opposite energy of me threw me into those levels of terror that I was seeking out, the bottom of fear. And in really good mystical form, the only way to move out of such a event is through it. So I ended up merging with, or basically allowing, the annihilation. It was the ego's assumption was that I was going to just not exist, but the annihilation of my essence by merging with my opposite in consciousness. And so I'll name it. My essence is luminosity. So I just radiate a lot. I'm a flashlight, and that's my energy. It's that simple. But the opposite of me is like a black hole. It's hungry for constant energy without bounds, endlessly hungry. So I might call it endless hunger or unending consumption of energy. And I've had initiations before where I was given this chance to perceive this energy in a form that I could interact with. So real life events where I was given access to this energy, and it was utterly horrific. Nothing that I would ever want to deal with. But what I'd realized is that I hadn't fully dealt with it in the body. And part of the puzzle here is that it's embodiment, full embodiment of all of this light and what is available. That is the task. It's no longer the mind alone. It has to be, and has been for a long time, perhaps the past at least several hundred years, embodiment. So going in and saying, all right, I'm going to welcome undying, endless consumption and hunger. What's that going to do? Well, the ego says that then you're going to die and not exist ever again, and it's over. But that's the illusion. And so when you merge with these sorts of things, it ends up being something much more simple. It's just a shortcut home. And unlike other polarities where there's a middle way out of the polarity can be nuanced. So victim and tyrant, or scarcity and abundance. Each person's going to have their nuanced middle way through those polarities. But when you're dealing with yourself and your opposite, the only middle way is source direct. And so by collapsing that, you can actually access some of this energy that's available. And I'm not saying that this is easy. It's not at all. It took me over a month and a half to get through that process. But it's an opportunity. It's an initiation time, and there's no perfect timing for all of us. It's all going to be your own timings. So if you use this as a tool and intend for you to get to the bottom of your fears and your wounding, then you're probably going to find something like this at the very bottom, is what I think is happening. And then the second tool that has arisen was some of the energy available is all this love that Kaylin's talking about. And it dawned on me that I really didn't know what I was looking at. And it's not that you can see it, because there's not really much to see when it comes to these new energies. It's so clear, but you can feel it. And I realized I'm not familiar with this. I thought I was. I thought I could tell you what love was, but I really can't. So I've realized, and what happens when you recognize that you're not embodying the energy available is you'll start to perceive the constructs that are keeping you from doing that. So it looks like a stained glass window to me. And so I'm taking these pieces down and being like, oh, well, this is from my dad. My dad said that love is loyalty. Well, that's partly true. So I just embrace that, absorb that, and take another chunk. Oh, love is attention. I got that from my mom. Okay. Because it's partly true, but it's not the fullness of the spectrum of what this love really is. So if we dismantle our programming, our cultural conditioning in this way, very systematically, we're going to be offering this recapitulation as part of our efforts in finalizing the experiment of consciousness that's ending. Because we're at a grand 800,000 year ending right now. And like any good scientists in spirit, it's really important for us to assess what's happened. And this is going to turn into much more than the personal, because then you're going to start to have past life pieces that come up, because we have to recapitulate everything that we've done here. And it could also be lives where you weren't being human, but you were involved somehow in the experiments of consciousness on Gaia. And that's really key, is to really understand why your soul is engaged in this experiment, and then assess your part in it. And all you have to do is just your part. And it's going to arise in other people around you, and it's going to become very clear, oh, wow, this is much bigger than me. Like, for example, I've been dealing with the dismantling of the energetics around duty that I inherited from my lineage from Delphi, and among others. And the other more important one was the horizontal competitive aggression that was seated in the feminine at that time. So those two things in me, I have to pull those up and start to pick apart and dismantle how they show up in how I'm interacting or in anything that I'm doing. And so you'll just, with intention, you'll be able to separate yourself from these spheres of illusion. They're just like big bubbles of illusion, and they're very well put together. We've been putting these together inside of the parameters of an experiment for almost 1 million years. So now it's time to be done, so we can access the new energies coming. And what's happening galactically in astrophysics is fascinating, because unlike any other transit event, as the electromagnetic field of our planet continues to disappear, it's 30% gone right now, the electromagnetic current sheet from the center of our galaxy is upon our solar system now. And this happens every 12,000 years. And as that occurs, it actually literally causes more light from the galactic, literally in a very physical way, to enter into our systems and dismantle all this stuff. So some people are calling it de-evolution. I don't really like that term. I like the deconstructing of consciousness better. That makes more sense because everything's conscious. And then the tricky part, though, is that unlike any other time before on this planet, at the exact same time as this full event comes fully to fruition over the next 20 years, we also get a huge photon blast from an explosion that happened about 1 million years ago from the center of our galaxy that will reach us at the exact same time. And that's never happened before. We have no idea what's going to happen. We have no clue. We have not 1 ounce of knowing about where we're at. This is how new all the energy is. So anywhere you look, geology, astrophysics, whatever, astrology, mysticism, you're going to find that this is turning out to be the biggest transit change, evolutionary punctuated event in consciousness, and everybody's here for it. So it's very exciting. The other things that I notice about the new energy are that they are sort of revealing very slowly what I call natural law, mystical law, and galactic law. And these are the parameters in which we built the experiment. So if you imagine you're doing experiments in a lab and you've got your tools and you were given a certain set of tools to work that experiment, but it turns out there is a storage area with like 1 million more tools, but that's not what that was not agreed on, that you were going to have access to all of that. You were given a certain set of tools to do this experiment, and it was agreed on, and you agreed on it too. Well, now the lab, which is the parameters in which the natural law, the galactic law, the mystical law in which all of those experiments were being done, has now dropped its walls, dropped its floor, dropped its ceiling, and revealed itself to be the universe. And meanwhile, the warehouse has been unlocked. Now you need to assess what you've learned with the tools that you had. And you're going to end up putting all those tools back in the warehouse and rebuilding an entirely new lab within the parameters of the universe, which is basically universal law. Ultimately, all of those end up as universal law. And then you have to go through all the 1 million tools in the warehouse to decide what we're going to use next. That's where we're at right now, is in the dismantling of the lab and understanding how we use those tools, why we picked them, reassessing everything we learned and any successes and any juicy failures. And now we're heading into something that is so unique. And then meanwhile, all the access to the light and the energy of the universe is being pumped into the situation. So no longer are there the same universal parameters that we worked in before. That's all gone. So this is why this feels like the biggest moment in time every day, because it is. And to be gentle with yourself. And with that, of course, I'll hand it off to Sarah, who's going through and experiencing, I think, something very similar.
I am indeed. Thank you, Elizabeth. So yeah, so just picking up at what Kaylin was talking about, the wounded healer, that's definitely me right now in a very 3D sense. I'm not owning it as a new ID, but with a sense of humor, and also using the word chatter and all that you've spoken about, Elizabeth, how, really mirrors some of what I'm experiencing. So I came here today thinking, oof, I don't know quite what I can contribute, not because I have nothing to contribute, but because I'm right in the middle of a very shamanic healing process, which I'll share a little bit about in a minute. But as I was watching us all, my eye was drawn to this beautiful orange flower that's sitting here on my desk. So I think she's here with us anyway, but I'm going to introduce her because I think there's 5 of us here today, not 4, well, it's probably many more, but she's an active participant. This is a sun star, and she's a lily of exactly the same family, and she actually looks very similar to the Star of Bethlehem, which is in the Rescue Remedy, which is white, looks really similar to that. This is orange. So I saw her, she's just sitting here in the one of the local shops, and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to spend some time with you. So because she's from the Star of Bethlehem family, she's going to be definitely working with releasing trauma, releasing any traumatic imprints, which is kind of what we're talking about here, and replenishing that with beautiful golden light, so of that frequency. So what can I say? So on the full moon that's just gone, literally as the full moon went through, I wasn't very well, and I met quite unexpectedly with a very large bump, a concrete floor. I won't really say any more than that, but that's enough. And in the process, I broke my collarbone. So I'm okay. I'm being taken care of with a sling and all of those amazing things, and lots of homeopathic remedies and flower essences and lots of support. One of the things that I've longed for all through my life is support. And it came to me just because every time when I take the sling off, I mean, I'm sure you don't really need to see my sling, but I'll just use it as a graphic here. When I take this off, my arm hurts a lot, but when I put it back on, it's just like, actually, I'm not even in pain. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have support. So I just started to notice on a very sort of grassroots level, all the support that was in my life, even down to that. And I'm very grateful. So if you, as I suspect, I know many, many people who are having different versions of what I'm going through right now. We're all over the planet, and especially if you're watching this, if it is you and you're in the raw parts of it like me, there will be a whole load of support around you. You know, it's just in very unexpected places and expected places. What I'm hearing, it's very early days for me, so everything I'm saying is quite unfiltered. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but it's just kind of quite raw, you know, is that even when we're broken, which literally I am right now on some level, we're not. You know, there's great wholeness in being broken, and the old Sarah of many years ago would have hidden at this point. It's not that she would have told lies, but she would have gone completely invisible because she would have had shame about being broken. And this time I find myself actually wanting to share. It's okay to be broken, because when we are whole, when we're broken, when we're not broken, it's got nothing to do with that. There is a wholeness. We are loved, we are sacred, we are holy. What we're doing here is holy. And yeah, so it's kind of what I'm hearing and seeing, and I feel absolutely okay sharing on this level. The other 2 flowers that just came through as you were all talking, I think they're ones that I've spoken about before. So there's obviously the sun star here, who's just here as part of our group. As in terms of flower essences, Snowdrop has been with me again. I'm pretty sure I've spoken about Snowdrop again, but I think I could probably talk about her every single day. Snowdrop, to me, she's obviously one of the first flowers to come up in the spring. She comes up through the snow, through the cold. She's one of the first signs of new life, of new birth, which is always a beautiful sign. Snowdrop told me very, very clearly when I did some journeying with her probably about 10 years ago, that she could actually help me rewrite the past and the future. And that timelines, actually, the timelines that we've grown up with were really just like not useful. So she was here. We can change, we can rewrite the future. So she's come forward for me right now for all the reasons, as I'm sure, but I think I'd like to extend her message out there. If there's any parts of people who are listening who feel, I'm just using that word broken, I think we all hold it for what it is, who have been shattered, who haven't quite emerged as the next bit yet, are in that middle space, that certainly essences like the Star of Bethlehem, the rescue remedy, can be hugely supportive. Snowdrop, her essence, or just talking to her, she'll hear you if you just talk to her, to help guide you to rewrite the future. And then finally, and I know I've spoken about this before as well, but gold is such an ally right now, because as our cells change and expand and hold the light that Elizabeth was talking about, particularly, you were talking, Elizabeth, about the photon energy coming, gold would be a huge ally, because gold actually helps to hold the cellular structure as it expands. Yeah. And so I think that's me. Nalini, I will pass over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Lily. I appreciate that. I noticed her when we first began to talk before we started recording, so there are definitely 5 of us here today.
Yes.
So it's interesting. Bits of everything that everyone has said have obviously been coming up for all of us. My attention has been very drawn into this adventure of the passage of what we're calling 2023. I've spoken about this. I think Kaylin and I spoke about it last month, and I've done a couple of other videos about each of the full moons of this year, of which there are 13, holds very specific gifts. And in terms of recapitulation, so Elizabeth was saying, it's like the moon, a full moon is a reflection of the sun's energy. So it's always interesting what sign that's in, how it's showing up. But I've been shown and really been pulled into the current of these 13 jewels of transformation, these 13 full moons. And they are only the tip of the iceberg of what everything that's going on. But it's a fascinating stream of transformation. Last month, with the infusion of sapphire, Snowdrop was absolutely there, facilitating the whole thing, absolutely helping with that. And part of what I saw about it was, yes, it's all of this that needs to be shattered. We need to allow Source to obliterate, big word, but really true, all that we thought we were, all that we used to be. And these are the hard parts, at least they are for me, is the things that I really love. Like, I realized I've been holding off finishing, which it's almost done, finishing Roshini's book for 10 years now, because I don't want to let go of her. Excuse me. There's a lot of that coming out for all of us. This is liquid love, but it's the place where Chiron's karma or wounding turns into learning, and where the opposite isn't an opposite, it's a completion. Wholeness is wholeness, whether we appear to be or feel ourselves to be, or physically are broken or not. We're all broken in some ways, and we've all become even more so during these initiations since the past December solstice. And part of that is because what is happening energetically in March is where all these higher frequencies have been coming into the galactic sheet, the photon belt, yes, but there's a cresting wave that came in with this full moon, that this crest isn't going to come over and go down. It's going to go straight up into the equinox, and all these frequencies are going to go like this, just up into, I mean, from our perspective, because we stand this way, but they're going to go up into these higher frequencies, higher octaves of sound, light, tonality. that we've touched on. Anyone who's had any kind of awakening experience has touched on. And then, of course, the process is it's our job to live up to that, literally. Like, we have an experience, and if you're a beginner, you make the mistake of, oh, wow, that was great, I'm awake. Well, okay, now there's some work to do, but there's this, and then there's, all right, we have to live up to that, or there's a shattering, and then we will emerge from that just the way that a bulb or a seed splits so that the sprout can come forth. So with this huge uplift of energy, if we think of a plateau rising or an island being born volcanically out of the sea, there are all these things that are going to just slide off. It's mudslide city for a little while, where they simply cannot thrive on these new platforms of energy. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just the way it is. It's like, here's a new platform of energy, so what will thrive here, and what needs to thrive someplace else will. And this is what's happening. And if we can come to that just knowing of wholeness within ourselves, and let that be seeded and planted within these new fields. There's just this wave that came through this full moon was just intense, immense, and amazing. If we can be planted within that, and our idea of planting is that something gets put somewhere fixed. Not anymore. It's moving faster than we have any idea, just the way Gaia moves, and we're hurtling through space, only we don't perceive that because we go crazy. But it's just this new sprouting, this new blossoming. And so the whole green world, they get there first, by the way, the whole green world is helping us with this. All of the creature beings are helping this. So there was one day when, there were a lot of little sharp edges and gravel bits and things coming through as the immersion started to really integrate. And the cat that lives in this house came in, and it very insistently pushed me out of this chair into either sitting on the floor meditating or onto my bed, and sat on me, and then said, look at my body. And all these waves of energy, all these beautiful, they're like all these beautiful oceanic tones were moving through her body in waves and spirals and whirls. And she was not a bit fazed by this. She's like, yes, this is what's happening. This is how change happens. And of course, looked at me the way cats do, like, why don't the humans get with the program? But, and we will. But it's that level of openness to what is and what's coming, because they are the same thing. They are the now. There's nothing to fix or heal or mend, even though these processes are happening for us. There's nothing of that in the now. There's simply that wholeness. And some of the old tools might work, some of them might come out of the new warehouse, but they're all within this new wave, and everything we need is there, and there's nothing we need that's upstream. That doesn't exist anymore. We're simply in this transformation process. It's taking us down to, like Elizabeth was mentioning, the old lineage. We may not know we're a part of, genetic ones, bloodline ones, but also the things that we've believed, these deeply held beliefs that are sometimes in consciousness, sometimes mentally, but also in our bodies, mostly in our bodies. Like, this has been held in my body for a long time. Well, okay. And it's probably been really helpful. We know it's been helpful, or it wouldn't have been there. But even that is being shifted now. Even that has to allow to not so much be deleted, but to be completely, thoroughly, and unconditionally transformed. And that's what's happening. That's what's going to happen in this upheaval of energy. And then, of course, there'll be another one in June at the solstice. But by then we will have maybe integrated this one, and it will move us maybe forward, maybe upside down, maybe backwards. We don't know, but it will move us in completely different ways, from the inside out, from the wholeness out, and as tender and gentle, and in that place that goes beyond forgiveness, that says everything plays a role. All roles have a place in reality. And I've played roles that I could say right now I'm not proud of, and maybe that's bringing up shame, but it was a role that was played. And so if we need to go through the forgiveness doorway, we do, but it's also just realizing reality is made up of these roles. It's how the illusion works. And none of them are great and none of them are awful. They all simply serve a purpose. And everything that has to do with service and purpose and duty and even joy and laughter is changing. One of my theories is at the end of this year, we'll all speak unicorn. Because why not? I mean, love and laughter, right? That would be fun. That would be different. So anyway, it's this magical time we're in. And I think it's just amazing that all of our celestial neighbors are helping us with this, are giving us the assist that they are. So thank you for all of you that have stayed with us, hung in there, listened to this, and for letting us share what source moves through each of us for all of you.